So the very first thing we're looking at is vibrational frequency, the frequency. So this is like here I wrote something out here is like everything has a frequency. Everything has a rate of vibration, right? Like solid objects, inanimate objects, even that has a frequency or a rate of vibration. It might not be very much, but it's there, right? So our rate of frequency basically dictates how well our energy body is able to pump, right? Our chakras. Like the rate of pumping of the chakras, right, is dictated on frequency. So in our body, we have, depending on what chakra system you use, you might use a 7 chakra system. Sometimes there's a 9 chakra system, and then there's an 11 chakra system. But setting all of that aside, your chakras have very specific physical functions, psychological functions, and spiritual functions, right? And so part of what they do is they are in charge of a particular aspect in your body. They're in charge of a particular aspect in your emotions. They're in your mind. And then they're in charge of a certain aspect of your spiritual growth or your spiritual development. And so your chakras are constantly going back and forth like this, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They're constantly absorbing and expelling, just like your lungs. You're drawing energy in, you're drawing and pushing energy out, right? So this is how you are processing life force and then kicking off the used or stagnant energy that your body no longer needs. Just like you inhale oxygen, you don't just keep that air in your lungs. At some point, you got to push that out so that more fresh oxygen can come in. It's the same with life force. Your body draws in life force, it uses some of it up, and then there's like a byproduct, right? That needs to be pushed out. That used up energy needs to be pushed out, right? So frequency has to do with the rate of back and forth, the rate of absorption, and the rate of expelling that used up energy. Now, for that to happen, for there to be an increase of the back and forth, the way that that happens is with increased soul contact, right? There's no way to do a roundabout around that. Like if the chakra starts pumping faster, it's because there is an increase of soul energy, right? So what happens when you start um, treating the frequency, right? When you start treating the frequency, you are basically increasing soul contact in that area, and you're displacing the lower vibrational energy in the area, which means you're displacing blockages, you're displacing lower vibrational energies that have maybe been used up but still stuck in the body, or things that are causing disease, um, but also emotions, mind, and your spiritual development, right? You're displacing the lower by bringing in higher, right? And so this is what healing looks like. It is bringing in a higher essence and displacing the lower vibrational energy, right? And so at some point, the chakras start spinning faster and faster and faster, and then they start pumping like this, like they start pumping back and forth. Now, the average person, that is not the case. But as the frequency elevates, right, there's a greater potential for that, because at first you're pumping in more life force and you're pumping out more blockages, and you're pumping in more life force and you're pumping out more blockages. So already by that point, your body is recovering and regenerating at a much higher rate. It's kicking off diseased energy at a much higher rate. It's kicking off lower emotion at a much higher rate. It's kicking out lower mental activity, repetitive thinking, negative self-dialogue. It's displacing that at a much higher rate, right? Now, each chakra, each chakra has its own like frequency. Like the frequency of the crown is much higher than the frequency of the basic. You know, the basic is tied more to the form, right? The crown more to essence. So naturally, that essence, that frequency is going to be higher. So each of the chakras have their own kind of unique frequency. That frequency influences the systems in the body. It influences your emotions. It influences your mind. And those frequencies adjust when the body needs healing or when the body, in a negative way, is degenerating or diseased, right? So every chakra has its own unique frequency, right? Its rate of vibration or the rate of movement, the kind of energy that it brings in. And so with that, when we're going through and we're treating different conditions, it's a mix of different frequencies that are either causing the disease or healing the disease, right? And the more that we elevate our frequency, right, the more that we elevate our frequency, the more likely that the body will recover, the more likely that the emotions will stabilize and even become higher emotions, and the more likely that the mind is going to quiet down and become more cognitive. And then there is an increase of soul connection, right? So the frequency has to do with the pumping of the chakras, right?